Hi everyone, I'm Lisa and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. Today's card is using the brand new Painted with Love Designer Series paper from the Occasions catalog. Now at first glance you might think, oh, it's kind of busy, but wait till you see what I've done with it to create today's card. In addition to that, I'm going to teach you a really fun technique to get variegated color on this heart. And of course, we've got some bling on the card. Remember, if you're here from YouTube, you'll be able to find the pictures, the cutting dimensions, and all the supplies over on my blog. And I've put a link right down in the description of this video below, making it easy for you to navigate. Let's get over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's project. Look at the shimmer of this card. Isn't this stunning? This designer paper you're going to be able to find in the Occasions catalog. This catalog started on January 3rd and will run through May 31st. And you'll find a suite of products here on page 19, the designer paper. Now, it looks really busy when you first look at it, but I'm going to tell you what, in person, it is stunning. A whole page of beautifully coordinated accessories as well. Now, on the page adjacent to it, we're going to be using also the Heart Happiness stamp set. This is a great versatile stamp set that you can use all year round with different occasions. If you don't already have the annual catalog and the Occasions catalog and you don't have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I would love to send you complimentary copies. Just leave me a comment. This is also Stampin' Up's largest sale of the year. With any $50 purchase, you'll be able to choose a free product of your choice. I could include the celebration brochure as well as the catalogs. Let's get started on the card. My base is rich raspberry, so I'm going to fold that in half, and I'm a big fan of that bone folder for that nice crisp crease. You'll be able to find all the cutting dimensions for today's project along with the pictures over on my blog. Now I've also cut another piece of Whisper White cardstock, and I'm actually using this as a base to hold the designer series paper. Now some of you who are avid stampers might say, well, you really don't need this. I did it to just make my life a whole lot easier. I'm bringing in my silicone craft sheet, and I am going to begin by putting snail adhesive on the back side. Just like 95% of all the Stampin' Up! Designer Series papers, they are double-sided. We have a few that aren't because of the embedded metallics, but this one, of course, is. And I'm going to put adhesive on the back of this panel, and I'm actually going to cover this entire piece of white cardstock. So I've got my first panel here, and you're going to see I cut it a little bit long, and I'm going to give you a tip about that in a few minutes. Then I'm going to work on the next strip, which happens to be Melon Mambo. This one is Calypso Coral. This gradient paper is really, really pretty to give you a lot of options for color. And you can see I cut it in strips, and it's all actually the same piece of designer series paper. You can see a really great picture of these papers over on my blog. You'll be able to find the link right down below. That'll take you right to the blog post with the supplies. All right, so I've got my base. I found it extremely difficult to cut this exactly right. So what I decided to do was to cut away what I didn't need. I found that so much easier. Now, if you're proficient with your paper trimmer, by all means do that. Otherwise, you come in with your scissors on the reverse side. And by using the back side and that cardstock edge as a guide, you're able to get a really nice straight line. And then I'm going to take that piece off, stick that down here. The nice thing about the silicone craft sheet is adhesive will not stick to it. So that allows me to get adhesive on those small strips without getting it on my work surface as well. So I'm going to head and I'm going to cut this part off as well. That's going to leave me just what I need for my layer on my card. This piece is going to get layered on a piece of Whisper White cardstock as a border. Now, this is where you're probably saying, why didn't you just mount this on the white? Well, a couple reasons. First, I found it very difficult to get them even. Second of all, I found it difficult to maneuver the width. So this is just the way I'm teaching it. A lot easier to cut two separate pieces and make sure that they're nice and straight. I'm going to go ahead and place adhesive on the back of this panel here. And then I'm going to border it on this piece here, leaving just a margin of white all the way around. And then I'm going to flip that over and I'm going to rub from the back. This piece is going to get layered on the base of our card. Isn't that designer paper beautiful? So a little adhesive again in the four corners. And then that's going to get mounted here. Again, this is going to leave me a little bit of a border, and this is wider than what I would typically leave, but I wanted to let that paper really stand out. And again, I'll rub from the back. All right, let's work on our focal point now. I've pulled out the solid heart from the Heart Happiness stamp set. Really enjoying this because I can use this for all different occasions. Everything from, of course, Valentine's Day to miss you, thinking of you, sympathy cards, get well, and of course even birthday. So I wanted this heart to have a variation of color to it. So I used the same colors that were in the Designer Series paper. I have Calypso Coral, Rich Razzleberry, and Melon Mambo. So I'm going to start by opening up those ink pads. And I'm actually going to stamp the entire heart in Calypso Coral. So that's going to be my base. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a sponge dauber in Melon Mambo and add some random ink to this, just tapping it all over. And then a separate dauber in the Rich Razzleberry. So I had everything lined up and ready to go. And then I'm going to huff on it with my breath. I actually call that the Darth Vader. That just re-moistens the ink that's on the stamp because these dye-based inks can actually dry very, very quickly. And do you see that variegation of color in there? I've brought in my Big Shot with the magnetic platform, which I really like to use when I'm using framelits. It'll help keep the paper and the framelit in place. And then I've got a clear mat on the top to protect it. So here's my heart. And from the Sweet and Sassy framelits, there are coordinating framelits for all the hearts in this stamp set with the exception of this one, which actually is from a different set of framelits. So I've gone ahead and I've chosen the framelit that matches the size. If you're having difficulty with your mats, with the image slipping, then I'm going to recommend that you use a Post-it note. I will tell you too, the magnetic platform is like my best friend. I have found that that really helps to hold my framelits in place. Really important, you've got to flip those clear mats around. So what was on the top should eventually be on the bottom, and what was forward should be in the back. So it's really, really important to kind of switch these around from time to time to keep them from getting very bowed and then losing the contact to that magnetic platform. So there we have our die cut heart. I also have a small piece of Whisper White cardstock, and we're going to do a little bit of heat embossing for the greeting to bring in that gold. So here I've got my tray, I've got my embossing buddy. This is an anti-static powder, and just by rubbing it across the cardstock, it will tell the embossing powder not to stick where there is an ink, and it helps repel those small flecks that you would normally get on your cardstock. So I've mounted the words, "Life is so much better with you." This stamp set actually comes from the Occasions catalog, and it's called Petal Palette. Absolutely beautiful, and I will tell you, it's getting lots of rave reviews, probably one of the best sellers right now in the Occasions catalog. I'm using Versamark ink, which is a water-based ink, also works really, really great for tone-on-tone stamping. So stamp that here, and I know that you can't see it because it's invisible for the most part, but nice and sticky, so that's going to allow the embossing powder to stick right to the gritting. So I'm going to take off that lid, and I like to work over a coffee filter, so any extras I can get right back in the bottle. And I'm going to give that a good flick. And I've got my Stampin' Up! Heat tool. It has 2 speeds. There's a 1, which I like for drying the ink or using on vellum, and then a 2, which is the high speed. But once the gun gets hot, it will actually heat very, very quickly, which will make doing multiples of these very fast. What's going to happen is the powder is going to change to a shiny, almost foily type finish, and you can see it starting to change here now. Again, it gets really hot, so you're going to see me turn my hands to make sure that they're away from the heat so that I can heat the other side. A pair of tweezers works well. Just make sure that if they have a metal handle that you protect yourself, because those will conduct the heat as well. And that looks good. You want to make sure that the whole thing has a nice foily finish. If there's any powder that's not set, it will literally brush right off. I've also cut a piece of Rich Razzleberry cardstock. This is just slightly larger. And I'm going to put some adhesive on the back. When I do heat embossing, I tend to be a little bit more generous because you can see that the paper does have a tendency to bow from the heat. So I'm going to place that here and leave a small border all the way around, and I'll rub from the back. Base of my card, let's go ahead and mount that with some dimensionals. And I'm going to use 4. I want to make sure this is good and balanced when I get it into the post office. My mom is a recipient of a lot of my cards, and she tells me that oftentimes they come a little, off balanced if I don't use enough of those sticky things, because she doesn't know what they're called. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we use an ample amount of those. Next, I've got my heart. I'm going to omit a step on this heart that I did on the first one, but I'm going to show you. I want to give you two options. And I'm going to put dimensionals on the back, but this is going to be mounted halfway here and halfway there. But I want to tell you about the elevation difference. Do you see how this is high and this is flat? So if we were to put our dimensional here, that's going to make this side actually too shallow. So you'll need to stack two. So I'm going to take off the paper backing, and I'm going to take one more dimensional, and I'm going to lay it right on top, take off that paper backing. And now what's going to happen is when I put this on here, it's actually going to have the right elevation. See? Isn't that neat? So you don't have that gap between the high and then it'll be dipped because it'll be too low. I'm going to finish off with a little bit more bling. This might be enough for you, but I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more. These come from the metallic enamel shapes. So they're small, large, hearts and stars in gold and silver. They both come in the package that way, and they already have glue dots on the back. So I like to use my paper piercing tool to help me get those right on top of here. And I really love these because seriously, it's a no fuss type of thing. You just lift them up and you place them down on your card. All right, so there we have the card that we created today. Really fancy and really easy. Here's the original one. Do you see how I added the gold metallic thread here? It blends in a little bit, but boy, I'll tell you, it gives a lot more texture to that heart. I don't know, which one do you like better, with the thread or without the thread? Remember to head over to my blog where you'll find pictures and cutting dimensions for today's project. And remember, if you're interested in any of the catalogs, just leave me a comment. I'll be happy to send them to you if you don't already have a demonstrator. Thanks for joining me today, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.